The void was silent, as it always was. Yet within that silence, humanity's first true leap into the stars was taking shape. The colony ship Artemis had been built in Earth's orbit with trembling hands and burning ambition. It was meant to carry 50,000 settlers across the dark to carve out a new world for humankind among the distant stars. The navigational AI had plotted a precise jump corridor, a stable lane that should have dropped them near an unclaimed system, rich in resources. But the void had other plans. A single miscalculation, so small it barely registered, pushed Artemis off course. Instead of emerging near their chosen planet, the ship tore out of hyperspace into territory controlled by the Galactic Empire, the most dominant power the galaxy had known for 10,000 years. No human aboard knew it, at least not yet. Within hours of their arrival, shadows fell across the Artemis. Vast starships, sleek, curved things longer than cities, descended from hyperspace. Their hulls shimmered with the glow of Imperial shields, their banners burning bright with the golden sigil of the Empire. The comms erupted. "This is the 3rd Imperial Patrol," a voice thundered through translation relays, cold and imperious. "You have trespassed into sovereign Imperial space. Power down your drives, prepare for boarding, and submit to Imperial authority." Captain Elias Ward of the Artemis stood on the bridge, jaw set, heart hammering. His crew looked to him, terrified. Humanity had dreamed of aliens, but no one had expected this, to stumble straight into an empire older than human civilization itself. Ward pressed the comms switch. His voice was steady, though his blood ran cold. "This is Captain Ward of the Terran vessel Artemis. We are settlers, not invaders. We claim no allegiance to your empire. We bow to no throne but our own." The laughter from the patrol commander was cruel and sharp. "Do you think you are the first upstart race we have encountered? Every world bows. Every species kneels. You will do the same, or you will be broken." Ward muted the channel, staring out at the alien warships. Behind him, First Officer Mira Chang whispered, "Sir, our escorts—" "Yes," Ward said. He had not forgotten. Trailing behind Artemis were 5 Terran escort ships, small by alien standards, crude by galactic measure. They were not battleships, not titans of war. But they were human ships, built with stubbornness, built with desperation, built with a spirit that refused to yield. And when the Empire demanded kneeling, that spirit burned brightest. The Empire did not wait long. A single Imperial cruiser moved forward, massive compared to the escorts, its weapons cycling to life. This was no negotiation. It was a demonstration. They would cripple the humans, seize their ship, and parade them as proof that even newcomers must kneel. But the humans were not like the others. The cruiser fired. A blinding lance of plasma streaked across the void, enough to vaporize a city. It should have ended the fight instantly. Instead, the Terran escort vanguard surged forward, shields screaming as they absorbed the blast. Her captain, Ren Hale, spat fire into his comms. "Return fire! All ships now!" The void exploded. Railguns thundered, spitting hypervelocity rounds. Missiles screamed from Terran tubes, streaking like meteors across the black. And against all expectation, against all history, the Imperial cruiser shuddered. Shields buckled, armor ruptured, fire blossomed from within its hull as human weapons, crude yet relentless, punched deeper and deeper. Seconds later, the cruiser, an untouchable symbol of Imperial might, broke apart in silence, its wreckage tumbling into the abyss. The Artemis bridge was silent. Captain Ward stared at the fading debris, his crew wide-eyed in disbelief. "We just," Mira whispered. "We destroyed them?" Ward's lips tightened. "No, we reminded them." The comms crackled again, but this time the Imperial voice was no longer amused, no longer mocking. It was tight with fury, with disbelief. You dare resist the Empire? You dare destroy one of our ships? Ward answered without hesitation. We are humans. We are free, and we will kneel to no empire. Across the stars, whispers began to spread. News of the skirmish reached the Empire's capital within days. The court dismissed it at first, believing the patrol must have been careless, that the humans had been lucky. But survivors from the engagement told a different story. They spoke of human ships fighting like wolves, coordinated and ruthless. They spoke of settlers who, instead of surrendering, stood defiant even in the face of annihilation. Word traveled fast through the undercurrents of the galaxy. Slave races, beaten down for centuries, whispered the tale in secret. Traders, mercenaries, smugglers, all carried fragments of the story. A new species has arrived. They do not bow, they do not kneel. They fight. But the Empire was not amused. On the capital world, the Emperor himself considered the reports. His advisors demanded punishment, swift and brutal. Crush them before others take inspiration, they urged. And yet, the Emperor hesitated. For 10,000 years, no species had dared say no. Even those who resisted at first had eventually bent the knee, broken by overwhelming power. But these humans, primitive, young, reckless, had already destroyed a cruiser. Already, drawn blood, and worse than their defiance, was the fear they ignited in others. Already the words were spreading across the fringes. We do not kneel. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. The humans had stumbled into his empire by accident, but accidents had a way of changing destiny. Back on the Artemis, humanity gathered its breath. Captain Ward knew the Empire would come again, harder, stronger, with fleets that dwarfed anything Earth could muster. But he also knew something else. Humanity had tasted the truth. They were not prey. They were not subjects. They were a force the galaxy would have to reckon with. Ward stood at the viewport, watching the stars burn. His words were quiet, but every soul aboard heard them, and history itself would remember them. They thought we would bow, but they don't understand us yet. We are human. We stand. Always. And in that moment, far beyond Earth, the fate of empires began to shift. The summons came like thunder from the void. When the Artemis and her escorts returned to Earth with tales of the first encounter, of alien warships, of demands for submission, of a human refusal that ended in fire, the world erupted. Fear clashed with pride. Politicians argued, generals plotted, scientists scrambled. But above all, humanity understood one truth. They had been noticed, and the Empire had taken offense. A fleet of imperial envoys arrived in Sol within months, their ships, vast and gilded, their banners blazing with the golden sun sigil of their dominion. They did not orbit politely. They descended like gods come to judge. This world, the envoy declared to all of Earth via planetary broadcast, now stands before the Emperor. You will kneel, you will swear fealty, or you will be erased. For the first time in history, all nations of Earth gathered beneath one roof. The United Terran Council was born in defiance of the ultimatum. And when the Empire demanded Earth send representatives to the galactic capital to seal their obedience, humanity agreed, but not to obey. They went to show the stars what it meant to be human. The capital world of the Empire was a jewel unlike anything mankind had ever seen. Cities of crystal spires stretched to the horizon. Sky rivers of light danced above continents. Their throne world was a planet-sized cathedral of power, where billions lived only to uphold the Emperor's will. Into this heart of dominion strode a delegation of humans: Captain Elias Ward, First Officer Mira Chang, and Ambassador Aisha Karim. Chosen for their resolve, their steadiness, and above all, their refusal to bend. In the great hall, beneath a ceiling that shimmered with galaxies, they were led before the emperor. He sat upon a throne forged from the husks of conquered worlds, his crown alive with starfire. Thousands of courtiers watched in silence. Every delegate from every other species knelt as the humans entered, all but them. Ward and his delegation stood tall, their boots echoing across the floor. They did not kneel, they did not bow. They looked the emperor in the eye. Gasps rippled through the chamber like lightning. No one had ever dared. "You are bold," the emperor said at last, his voice a slow rumble. "Boldness has broken empires before. But in the end, all come to heel. You will kneel." Ambassador Karim's reply was steady, her words carrying the weight of a planet. "Humanity does not kneel. Not to kings, not to emperors, not to gods. We are free, and we will remain so." The silence that followed was more deafening than a battle. The courtiers recoiled in outrage. The emperor's eyes narrowed. "Then," he said, his voice like a blade unsheathing, "you will learn fear." The lesson came swiftly. Days later, the Empire dispatched a fleet to Seoul. 100 warships, sleek and indomitable, descended upon the Terran system. To them, it was not a war. It was punishment, a show of force to break the will of a young species too stubborn to know its place. But humanity had not been idle. Ever since the Artemis's return, Earth had united in feverish preparation. Shipyards lit the night sky. Factories thundered. Old rivalries dissolved beneath the shadow of the Empire. Humanity had built warships not of beauty, not of elegance, but of survival. Massive carriers bristling with missiles, dreadnoughts clad in slabs of armor, destroyers armed with railguns that struck like thunderbolts. When the Empire's fleet arrived at the edge of Seoul, they found not a frightened world, but a fortress. The Battle of Seoul was fire and fury. The Empire expected surrender after their first volley. Instead, the humans surged forward, their fleets moving like a single organism, forged by desperation and honed by centuries of war with themselves. Imperial beams slashed across the dark, carving through space like the wrath of gods. But human. Shields, crude, overlapping and layered, absorbed the blows. Railguns roared, missiles screamed, and boarding pods full of Marines hurled themselves into the maw of the enemy. The Empire expected the humans to break. Instead, they counterattacked with ferocity unseen in 10 millennia. They fought not for conquest, but for survival. For home. Hours bled into days. Ships burned. Wreckage filled the void. And then, in the third dawn of battle, humanity revealed its hidden hand. The Aegis, Earth's first experimental super-dreadnought, emerged from Mars' orbit. It was not sleek. It was not beautiful. It was a fortress in motion, its hull thicker than mountains, its guns larger than any seen before. With a single salvo, it tore through 3 Imperial cruisers. Its rail guns cracked the shields of the Imperial flagship. Its missile bays unleashed a storm the Empire had never imagined. The tide turned. By the battle's end, half the Imperial fleet was wreckage drifting toward Jupiter. The rest fled into hyperspace, limping home with shame etched into their hulls. The galaxy trembled. Never in living memory had the Empire been bloodied so deeply by an upstart race. Never had a primitive world stood against them and survived. Yet Earth had not only survived, they had won. Whispers ignited across the stars. On slave worlds, chains suddenly felt lighter. On conquered colonies, eyes lifted skyward with hope. Smugglers and rebels carried the tale faster than Imperial censors could silence it. A new phrase spread, 3 words spoken with reverence and fire: humans do not kneel. On the capital world, the Emperor seethed. His advisors demanded total, annihilation. "Burn Earth to ash!" they cried. "Crush them before others rise!" But the Emperor sat in silence, staring at the stars. For the first time in centuries, doubt gnawed at his throne. Humanity had fought like wolves, cornered but unbroken. Their ships lacked elegance, but their spirit was unyielding. And worst of all, the Emperor saw the truth his advisors feared. To speak aloud, if the humans could defy him, others might follow. His empire, built on obedience and fear, trembled at the thought of defiance spreading like fire. "This is no longer about Earth," the Emperor whispered. "This is about the Empire itself." Back on Earth, Captain Ward stood once more at a viewport, staring at the stars. The Aegis drifted nearby. Scarred but alive, humanity's shield against the darkness. He thought of the Emperor's throne, of the demand to kneel, of the arrogance that believed fear would always triumph, and he smiled, weary but unbroken. "They thought we would bow," he murmured. "Instead, we showed them what it means to be human." The stars glittered in silence, but across the galaxy, rebellions stirred, whispers spread, and the Empire itself began to crack. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy had hope, and it had begun with humanity's refusal to kneel. The Empire was bleeding. For 10,000 years, its will had gone unchallenged. Its fleets had crushed empires, its decrees had chained species, its throne had remained unshaken. But now, across the vastness of its dominion, whispers spread like wildfire. The humans fought the Empire. The humans won. The humans do not kneel. At first, the Empire dismissed the whispers as rumor, as seditious noise. But the truth could not be contained. The Battle of Saul had shattered more than ships. It had shattered the illusion of invincibility. And in that fracture, resistance began to stir. On the mining world of Kethar, where generations of slaves had toiled under whips of plasma, and the gaze of overseers, a small band of workers gathered in the tunnels. Their voices were hushed, their eyes wide with a new fire. "They destroyed half the Imperial fleet," one whispered. "They stood before the Emperor himself and did not kneel," another breathed. The overseer's lash cracked through the cavern. The whispers fell silent, but the fire did not die. It spread. By nightfall, dozens of miners murmured the same words, passing them like contraband. "We do not kneel." On the outer rim, smugglers and traders carried the tale faster than any official fleet. Cantinas echoed with it. Pirate captains toasted to it. Mercenaries swore by it. In hidden cells across the galaxy, old rebel movements, once hopeless, once broken, began to stir again. They painted Terran banners on their walls, crude symbols of Earth, though few had ever seen the planet. To them, humanity became more than a species. It became a symbol. If they could resist, anyone could. The Emperor saw it all. Reports flooded his throne, uprisings on half a dozen worlds, mutterings of rebellion on 100 more. Entire slave races once thought docile, now spoke with dangerous confidence. In the council chamber, his advisors screamed for escalation. "Burn Earth! Burn their colonies! Let the galaxy see the price of defiance!" But the Emperor remained, still, his fingers curling around the armrest of his throne. He had seen this pattern before, centuries ago, when another race had risen. They had resisted, and the Empire had crushed them. But it had taken decades, countless lives, and had nearly unraveled the throne. The humans were different. They were young, unpredictable, and, most dangerous of all, inspirational. Killing them would not kill their words. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity knew the storm was only beginning. Ambassador Aisha Karim stood before the United Terran Council, her voice steady but grim. "The Empire will not forgive our defiance. Already we see unrest spreading in their domain. They will not allow us to be a spark. They will come, not just to destroy us, but to make us an example. Captain Elias Ward, scarred from Soul's battle, leaned forward. Then let them come. Every day we stand, every victory we win. It isn't just for us anymore. The galaxy is watching. They need to see that the Empire can be fought. And so humanity prepared, not only for survival, but for something greater, for leadership. The first sparks of rebellion ignited into flame. On the agricultural world of Vera, peasants rose up, slaughtering their overseers with farming tools, chanting the human words, "We do not kneel." On the ocean world of Drenar, enslaved divers refused to harvest the Emperor's pearls, declaring a strike. Imperial enforcers drowned them by the hundreds, but for everyone silenced, 10 more voices rose. On the desert moon of Karesh, children painted the words in blood upon the walls. Humans do not kneel. The Empire crushed each rebellion mercilessly. But like weeds in stone, more sprouted, and each time whispers spread that humans were behind it, guiding it, inspiring it, and in time, those whispers became truth. Human ships began to appear beyond Sul, small at first, frigates, destroyers, stealth craft. They slipped into occupied systems, bringing weapons to rebels, medical supplies to the wounded, messages of hope to the broken. The galaxy called them the Free Terran Fleet. To the Empire, they were terrorists. To the oppressed, they were saviors. Captain Ward himself led raids deep into enemy territory, striking supply convoys, disabling communication arrays, tearing holes in the Empire's armor. The humans were no longer just defending Earth. They were carrying the war outward. And with every strike, every defiance, more worlds rose. The Empire's throne shook. Never before had rebellion spread so far, so fast. And at its heart was not an ancient rival, not a superpower, but a single upstart species that had stumbled into the Empire by accident. The Emperor raged. Fleets were dispatched, systems burned, yet the harder he struck, the more the galaxy resisted. For every rebel crushed, 3 more rose. For every human ship destroyed, another appeared. It was no longer war. It was contagion, and humanity was the carrier. One night aboard the flagship Aegis, Captain Ward stood before a holographic map. Dozens of systems glowed red with rebellion. Blue markers showed human fleets moving like sparks in the dark. Mira Chang, his first officer, stepped beside him. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was resolute. "Do you see it, Elias? They're not following us because of our weapons. They're following us because we refused, because we said no when everyone else bowed." Ward nodded slowly. The weight of history pressed heavy on his shoulders. "This isn't about Earth anymore," he said. "It's about all of them. Every world that's ever dreamed of freedom. We lit the fire. Now we have to keep it burning." And across the galaxy, in places the Emperor's fleets could not reach, in whispers too quiet for censors to silence, the words became prophecy. Humans do not kneel. Children of slave worlds spoke it before bed as prayer and promise. Soldiers of the Empire muttered it in their bunks, questioning their loyalty. Entire species who had forgotten hope now dared to imagine freedom. The Empire trembled. The galaxy shifted. And humanity, accidental, stubborn, defiant, had become the spark of a revolution that could consume the stars. In the end, no one remembered exactly where the phrase began. Perhaps it was first spoken aboard the Artemis. Perhaps it was whispered in Kethar's minds. Perhaps it was shouted on the battlefield of Sol. But every species remembered who carried it. It was the humans, the ones who stepped into an empire by accident, the ones who stood when all others knelt, the ones who turned defiance into a weapon, sharper than any blade. And as fleets burned, as empires shook, as freedom spread, the galaxy understood a truth it could never unlearn. Humanity would never bow.